Somewhere on a quiet suburban street, a man is being underestimated. His neighbors call him odd. They whisper, they exclude, they look right through him. What they don't know is that this same man, the one in the old gray car, the one they turned away at the door, is sitting on a fortune they can't even imagine. But before this video is over, you're going to feel something uncomfortable. Because this story isn't just about one man on one street in Ohio. It's about every time you judged someone before you knew their story. Every time someone judged you. And what happens when the truth finally refuses to stay quiet? This is the story of Ken. And if you've ever been dismissed, excluded, or made to feel like you didn't belong, stay until the very end, because this one is for you. Ken was 24. He lived alone in a modest beige house on Maplewood Drive in a small town in Ohio. He drove a 2014 gray Honda Civic with a small dent on the bumper he never fixed. He worked a regular data entry job downtown. Nothing impressive, at least not on the surface. He mowed his own lawn, wore plain t-shirts and white sneakers, carried the same worn backpack from college. To everyone on Maplewood Drive, Ken was background noise. But here's what none of them knew. When Ken was 19, his parents, two engineers who had worked and saved and invested for 30 years, passed away within 8 months of each other. They left him everything. A carefully managed estate worth just over $4 million. Ken didn't buy a sports car, didn't move to a penthouse. He called his father's trusted financial advisor, built a diversified investment portfolio, and went back to his quiet life. Because Ken had watched his parents chase status until it cost them their health. He had no interest in performing wealth for people who hadn't earned the right to see it. He just wanted peace. But on Maplewood Drive, silence is suspicious. Modesty is weakness. And a young man in a gray Civic who keeps to himself? To his neighbors, he was nobody. It started with a block party. Every summer, Richard, who lived 2 houses down and considered himself the unofficial mayor of Maplewood Drive, personally delivered the invitations. Printed cards, slipped under doors, given to everyone who, in his judgment, belonged. Ken's invitation never came. So that Saturday, when he heard music drifting over the fence, he walked over with homemade potato salad and a quiet smile. Richard met him at the entrance. "Hey, buddy." The smile was wide. "Empty. This one's kind of a private thing this year. You know how it is." Ken looked at the potato salad in his hands. "I understand," he said, and he turned around. Through her window, Diane watched him leave and nodded to her friends. He never fit in here anyway. I don't even know what he does for work. Probably barely getting by. The others murmured agreement. "Did you see that old Civic? He still hasn't painted that fence. Look how he dresses." Ken sat in his backyard that evening with a book and a glass of lemonade. He could hear the laughter through the fence. He felt no anger. Just a quiet, settled clarity about the kind of people he was dealing with. Then came the HOA meeting in September. The issue was simple. Repaving the shared alleyway, cost split 6 ways. Richard presented the numbers. Ken raised his hand. "I'm happy to cover a larger share if that makes it easier for anyone." Silence. Then Richard laughed, a sharp, dismissive laugh. "I think we'll manage without the charity. We're all doing just fine, Ken." A few people chuckled. Ken lowered his hand. 2 seats away, a man named Todd did not laugh. He leaned over quietly and said, "That was generous. Ignore them." Ken looked at him. "You're the teacher, right? 4th grade?" "That's me," Todd said. "Good job to have," Ken said. Todd smiled. "Honestly, it is." That was it. That was all it took. 2 men who had both learned, in different ways, that the loudest rooms are almost always the emptiest ones. Ken and Todd fell into an easy friendship. Saturday mornings at a diner off the main road. Coffee, books, honest conversation. Todd never asked about money, never wondered why Ken drove that old Civic. He just liked talking to him. Because Ken was thoughtful and real. On Maplewood Drive, that was rarer than anyone would admit. Meanwhile, the whispers continued. Diane ran a neighborhood group chat she called her Observations. Ken's name came up regularly. Then, in October, something unusual appeared in Ken's driveway. Not the gray Civic. A black Lincoln Continental. Sleek, quiet, expensive. A man in a dark suit stepped out, knocked on Ken's door, and went inside. Diane watched from her window for 45 minutes. She texted Richard the moment the man left. Who drives a Lincoln Continental to visit the boy in the Civic? Richard didn't know, but he intended to find out. What they couldn't have known, what they had no way of knowing, was that the man in the Lincoln was Marcus Webb. Senior portfolio manager, Ken's financial advisor. He visited twice a year, old school, the way Ken's father had always preferred. And that October meeting was about something significant, one of Ken's private equity positions. A stake in a small logistics tech startup had just been acquired by a major national corporation. Ken's returned $812,000. He sat in his living room after Marcus left, holding a single sheet of paper with that number on it. He felt no urge to celebrate, no urge to tell anyone. He called Todd. "You free Saturday?" "Always," Todd said. "Coffee's on me." "Coffee's always on you." "This time I mean it a little differently," Ken said. "I'll explain Saturday." He set the paper down on the table. Outside on Maplewood Drive, everything looked exactly the same. 3 weeks later, Diane's daughter came home for Thanksgiving. Home from college, bored, scrolling a local news app while her mother complained about the neighbors, as she often did. She tabbed on a business article and went completely still. "Mom," her voice was slow, careful. "What's the last name of that guy you're always talking about, the one with the old car?" Diane looked up from the stove. "Mercer. Ken Mercer." "Why?" Her daughter turned the laptop around. The silence in that kitchen lasted a long time. The article was from a local business journal, the kind most people ignored. But this one had covered the acquisition of the logistics startup. It listed early investors by name, Kenneth A. Mercer. Maplewood Drive, Ohio. There was a photo. Ken, in a dark blazer at a formal investor event 2 years earlier, calm and completely at ease in a room full of executives, smiling the same quiet smile he always wore. Diane called Richard that night. "He's not broke," she said. "He's never been broke." Richard sat down. "That can't be right." "It has a photo, Richard." What happened next was not subtle. Within 48 hours, something shifted on Maplewood Drive that was almost painful to watch. Richard appeared at Ken's door Saturday morning with a basket of specialty cheeses. Enormous smile. Brand new energy. "Hey, buddy. Been meaning to properly welcome you to the block. Long overdue." Ken looked at the basket, then at Richard. The block party was 2 summers ago. Richard laughed too loud. "Water under the bridge." "We're getting a group together next Friday. Great restaurant downtown, private room. We'd love for you to come." Ken studied him for a calm, unhurried moment. "I appreciate it. I'm busy that Friday." He took the basket. He closed the door. He stood in his kitchen and felt no triumph. No satisfaction. Just the same quiet clarity he had always carried. He called Todd. "They know," he said. A pause. "How are you feeling?" "Fine," Ken said, and he meant it. Completely fine. Here's why Ken's story stays with you. Not because of the money. Not because of the dramatic reversal. but because most of us, at some point, have been Ken. We've been in rooms where people looked through us instead of at us, where our value was measured by what we drove, or what we wore, or what title followed our name. We've been dismissed before we were known. Ken's story is not a fantasy. It's a mirror. Lesson 1. Who you are when no one is watching is your real character. Ken had millions and chose humility. He had every reason to feel superior and chose kindness instead. When Richard turned him away, he didn't argue or retaliate. He went home with his potato salad and sat quietly in his backyard. That kind of grace, dignified and unperformed, is rarer than wealth. Lesson 2. Judging appearances will always betray the judge. Diane was sharp. Richard was confident. They were both completely wrong. Not just about the money, about the person. They built an entire verdict from the outside of something they never bothered to look inside. When the truth came out, they didn't discover something new about Ken. They discovered something uncomfortable about themselves. Lesson 3. Authentic friendship is the rarest currency. Todd didn't know anything about Ken's wealth when he leaned over at that HOA meeting and said, "That was generous. Ignore them." He didn't know on any of those Saturday mornings over coffee. And when he did find out, nothing changed, because nothing had ever been transactional between them. The people who show up for you during the gray Civic years are the only ones worth keeping. Ken still lives on Maplewood Drive, still drives a gray Civic, still mows his own lawn. The neighbors see him differently now. Some have genuinely made the effort. He treats them the way he has always treated everyone, with patience and no pretense. Richard moved to a new development the following spring. Diane stayed. She is, by most accounts, a little quieter now. Todd is still Ken's closest friend. They still meet at the diner on Saturday mornings. Ken is the godfather of Todd's daughter, born last year. Her name is June. And in the quiet moments, an ordinary evening, a simple cup of coffee in his modest kitchen, Ken feels something no balance sheet can measure. Peace. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel invisible, your story isn't finished. It's still being written. The world judges covers. History remembers what's inside. Don't change who you are to impress people who haven't taken the time to know you. Find your Todd. Be someone's Todd. If this moved you, hit like and subscribe. It helps this channel reach people who need to hear stories like Ken's. We bring a new story to you every week. Drop a comment. Have you ever been misjudged? Or realized too late you'd misjudged someone else? I read every single one. Thank you for watching. And remember, never judge a book by its cover. You might be standing next to a chapter that changes your life.